So my goal, honestly, was let me find out what she expects. Let me check those, add that to my list of stuff to do, right? But she asked me one question the first time I talked to her. She said, what do you want for your classroom and your students? In 10 years of my education, nobody asked me that. What do you want for your classroom and your students? And I don't think she expected what I told her, but I was like, and not that I told her something bad, but I was just so excited and empowered when somebody that's coaching me, a mentor, asked me, what do you want for your classroom and your students? And I said, oh my gosh, I want my students to come to school every single day with a purpose. I want them not to come to school to learn what I know, but to come to school and have me guide them to solve problems in the world. And I was just so elated. She cared. But I'm not saying that people didn't care before, but I don't think I was coached before. Whoever's your coach, go all in on that coaching session. I think the active learning framework really put a new light on authentic, student-centered classrooms. Right? We give them a purpose for learning because we know if we don't give them a purpose for learning, they're not going to learn. They're going to memorize until that next check mark and then give them the same assessment a week later. Out the window. It's not their fault. It's not their parents' fault. It's not society's fault. But we as teachers know it's because they didn't connect it to something. Right? So you're going to be designing units, and think of it as designing learning instead of lesson planning. In lesson planning, I'm going to plan a lesson. If I'm a pre-K teacher, and the last example was their TEK is to identify 13 letters by a certain time in the year. I'm not going to write a lesson plan to, well, I guess that's what I would have done, wrote a lesson plan to teach 13 letters. Well, now, in the active learning framework, you're going to be designing a problem they need to solve. And in order to solve that problem, guess what they're going to need to know? 13 letters in the alphabet. But I'm not planning to teach them 13 letters in the alphabet. I'm planning to get them engaged. A way to have a purpose, right? And so we're not shooting for the minimum. You're shooting for revolutionizing your classroom. When you plan an eStudio, and I highly recommend you plan an eStudio because it's an amazing tool, the planner tool in there is amazing, and you can plan with your colleagues simply, right? And the great thing about eStudio is you're not just making a plan and it's done, you print it and you give it to your kids. You're making a plan and it's alive. You know, you're always refining that unit in eStudio because your students aren't where you think they are. Maybe they are, they're probably not, right? And so we plan these differentiated levels and it doesn't happen, so you're going to plug in a different thing if they're at this level, right? You're going to find a new resource. So it's a live unit, right? So the most important thing, your job now as a teacher is not to teach, but to know your standards. Because what you're going to do behind the scenes, you're going to be the puppet master over here, and in that workshop on clownfish, I have digraph OW, I have compound word, I have digraph SH. And that's what these three kids that want to come to learn about clownfish are going to study for their word work that day. You see what I'm saying? So you're going to use the Teach Resource System, right? Those 9 days are suggested 9 days. So yes, you are going to follow the scope and sequence of the Teach Resource System, but that doesn't mean that you can't take a first grade in coins and use it in your first challenge. You know, if you've been in that grade level a while, what is the most bang for your buck, right? You have to know your TEKs. So when you plan a unit, think of all the subject areas it's going to hit. Like when we did our Save Our Planet unit, we always had ELAR standards on our rubric. And that was a science unit. But we had to read to research. We had to write to research. We had to communicate orally. You know, we had to connect. We had to make sure we put that period at the end of that sentence. We had to capitalize those letters, right? And so think big picture. What do you want your students to achieve? And I hope it's not just that they capitalize every sentence. I had some very high readers this year that really didn't need to set sight word goals, they really didn't need to set fluency goals, but they did need some autonomy goals. We did need to learn how to work with others respectfully, especially when they don't know as much as me. At the beginning of the day, we had a team huddle, and team huddle is, I was like, that's so lame, we already did, like, I already had a system for that. And I thought, team huddle, this isn't football. But then I just started calling it team huddle. And now team huddle is the best thing that ever happened. And I tell them something over here in the hallway, hey, da 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 da. And then when they go back to their team, I don't say it again. Because I want them to have a purpose. If I said, hey, team leaders, we're going to do this next, this, and make sure your teams know. And then I go in the classroom and I say, okay, I just told the team leaders. I don't have to listen to you. I also do a lot, at least once a week I'm Skyping with somebody, right? Our problem in our classroom was I killed the fish. I got a grant for a fish tank and some pets, and so I was so excited, and I believe it was over the Thanksgiving week break. And so I called my volunteer up. I said, oh my gosh, go with me to get the fish. It's so exciting. And well, at the same time, we were doing some other work in the classroom. And well, the fish sat on the desk for a while. The fish tank, we got through that grant. We were putting the water in after we put in the pretty plants, and it started leaking. So I killed it. Expensive, glowing, neon fish, right? But I still had the fish tank there. And so I said, hey, this is a problem. Obviously, I can't solve it, I already killed them. And so I designed a unit for the, it was a community project, because that's a community, the fish tank community, right? And so my students had to come up with a solution. Well, if you leave water in a fish tank and there's no other life in there, mosquitoes are going to, especially if you go mosquitoes are going to like that, and they're going to lay larvae, right? Oh. So we also had larvae on the water. And they had to figure out why, because their fish tank at home didn't have larvae. We did a Skype lesson with the coral reef in San Francisco. They learned, why the coral reef is dying and about the different temperatures in the water. And so they made the connections to that. Well, flash forward, they had to make proposals. Each team had to make a proposal. I was giving them $50 virtual dollars. I didn't give them $50. $50 they could budget. Now, think the teaks in first grade is compose and decompose to 20. They were composing and decomposing to 50. I think that we were covering those math teach, right? And I never opened that math book. So they had to do a pitch, right, like Shark Tank. And we watched a couple of episodes of Shark Tank, and they did a pitch. And our 5th graders were the sharks. I had my volunteer, she's amazing, go to Pet's Barn and just see if one of those people would be willing to go on Skype and go into our classroom so they could ask them questions, right? They were in the refine stage, they were, finding out why the water wasn't moving. They know the water was, because they learned from the coral reef, right? And so the lady at Pet's Barn said, absolutely. Daniel had asked Jeannie from the pet store, we learned that the coral reef is dying because of the temperature in the ocean is too warm, and that's why it bleaches out and gets white. Is that why our fish died? Because it was too warm? How can we make sure the temperature's right? And Mr. Cabrera was like, Miss Daniels, did you tell him to ask that question? I don't know that much about a coral reef. Right? I don't know. I killed the fish. People believe me that I didn't give that kid that question. So that just happened to be on a very exciting day for us, but not because Mr. Cabrera was in our classroom, but because we learned of a Skype aquarium expert who was willing to Skype with us. And that's how hard it was. My PTA president went to the Pet's Barn on Dyer and filmed her with her phone. And then we did the pitch, and the winning team, Miss Jeannie from Pet's Barn, delivered those fish to the classroom and announced the winner. The active learning framework is going to